all, so I'm back with another video of a Leetcode problem, and over here we are going to solve find numbers with even number of digits. So we need to understand what the problem is telling us first of all, and then we can go about solving it. So the first thing that we are going to do, and every time in an interview or any other place where you're trying to explain your problem or wanting to get to the solution of the problem, you must first begin with just understanding what the problem is telling you to do rather than directly jumping into the code part of the problem. So over here we are going to look at this problem first, ask ourselves what it is asking us to do, then we will move forward to figure out an algorithm which will enable us to reach to the solution, and then we are going to get our hands dirty onto the solution at the very end. So let's begin to first understand this problem. So the problem that is over here is telling us to basically, given an array nums of integers, return how many of them contain an even number of digits. So here we have the array is given to us. This is the array nums, that is 12, 345, 2, 6, 7,896. So we want to determine how many of these numbers are basically even, and we want to determine that number, we want to return that number. So over here you can clearly see that 12 and 7,896 are even numbers, and so our answer should be 2. So how we can go about doing this? So first of all, we need to traverse through this array. We want to begin by counting how many elements exist in the array, and only then we can go about determining which of them is even and which of them is odd, and then in the end we can return that number. So our first step should be using a for loop. Okay, we can clearly use any variable. I'm just writing down the algorithm, and I'm not actually coding over here. I will code onto the page of Leetcode, and there you can clearly understand what I'm trying to do over here. So our first approach should be to understand that we want to use a loop to traverse through the entire array. Then what do we want to do then? What can we do then? After that, we want to check, like over here we are going to use for loop to traverse through the entire array. Now if we move on to the first element, that is 12, how do we check if this element has even or odd? Like, how do we first count the number of digits? Determining whether the digits are even or odd, that is something later, that will come later in the process. But first we need to determine how many number of digits exist in an element. So over here, for that, the second thing that we are going to do is use a while loop, which will help us to check if our particular ith element, if it is 0 or not. This will help us to keep track of the number of digits in an element. So if we do that, what can we do? Okay, so over here we need to figure out how many digits are there in this element. So what can we do? We can use this. For beginners, it's just it's this, it needs this basically. Okay, so no need to worry about that. You can go and understand the syntax later on, but this is what it means. So until an element is reduced to 0, we want to keep doing this thing so that we are able to figure out, like this approach will make sure that we reduce 12 to 2 and then to 1, and then keep determining the number of digits that variable has. So we are going to keep track of the number of digits in a variable called digits. Okay, so here this will over here in the first element, this will become 2. After keeping track of the number of digits in an element, what we want to do is that we want to go forward and check if that particular element is even or odd, has even number of digits or odd number of digits, and that we can do by simply doing this. Okay, so if it is even, it will return 0, and if it's not, it will return false. Okay, so we want to keep checking this, and I'll just write the pseudocode over here. Okay, so we want to basically keep a check of whether our current element has even or odd number of digits. So if this is true, if this condition is true, right, I'll write T for true. Okay, this is really bad, but anyway, if this condition becomes true, what do we want to do? We want to increment a variable called count. So every even element, if we encounter an even element in the array, we will increase this variable count by 1. So it will keep track of the number of elements that we have encountered along our way, while we traverse through the array. So this will keep track of the number of even elements. Okay. So number 1, our first approach in solving this problem should be just going through the loop that is traversing, and inside this for loop we are going to keep this. Okay, and we're going to use a while loop to count the number of digits in every single element that exists. Okay, we want to count the number of digits over here, and then after we have counted the number of digits in a particular element, we are going to check if that particular element has even or odd number of digits. If it has even number of digits, we are going to increment this count variable, and if it doesn't, it'll remain just like that. And after we complete this set, we want to get out of this loop and say that the digits, okay, I'll just use text box. We have to say at the very end that digit is equal to 0. And why is that? Because if we do not set this back to 0, what will happen? It will keep increasing, because here digits is 2, it'll become 3 over here, 4 over here, 5 over here, and we want to basically return to setting this back to 0, so that we can begin at the very start over here, like setting back digits to 0 will only allow us to basically keep track of the next element, that is a 3 over here. So it should basically begin from 0, 1, 2, or 0, 1, 2, 3. So that is why we are doing digits equal to 0 after we complete both of these loops. So should we get back to coding? Let's get back to coding. So this is going to be our approach. We can get back to it. This is going to be our algorithm, and that is exactly what I said. You need to first of all understand the question, and then come out with an algorithm, and then go on to coding. And while you do this, I want you to make sure that you are communicating your thoughts. The way I'm doing it for you, I want you in an interview, when you sit down in an interview, the interviewer does not want you to write the perfect syntax of code, or he doesn't want you to basically, just go about, okay, this is really sad. Anyway, So the interviewer doesn't want you to write the code in perfect syntax. There can be logical errors, but it would be good that if errors do not arise. But the best thing that he would want from you would be to communicate what you're thinking, what you are, if you're able to understand the question, and how are you able to come up with an algorithm, what is going inside of your head. So every time that you encounter a question, begin with trying to explain to the interviewer what is going inside your head when you encounter a question, and how would you go about solving that question. Okay, so that is exactly what you're going to do. So over here we are going to declare a variable digits, initializing it to 0, Then we are going to declare a variable called count, initializing it to 0 back again. And then we are going to use a for loop. So I'm going to use I, you can use any variable that you want to. And I'm just for syntactical purposes, I'm going to leave space. Then we're going to keep this less than the length of the nums and increment it like that, just like that. Okay, so our approach was to use a for loop, right? So inside the for loop, we are going to see whether nums I, that is the current element that we are at, if that, until we want to basically do whatever comes inside of this variable until the nums become 0. So we are going to do this so that we're going to keep track of the digits that are inside the variable. Okay, so this is going to be our first loop, while loop. Then again, inside this loop, what we're going to do is that we're going to use an if loop. So if digits, like we have counted the digits over here, we come to the next loop and we're going to check if that has even or odd number of digits. So we're going to check if it has even number of digits, and if it does, we are going to increment count by 1. Okay, so the last step, which I told you, I'm not going to implement it just yet. I want to show you the errors that can pop up and why those errors will pop up. So let's just run this code. Okay, wait, what? Oh, I'm so sorry. Right, this should be nums I. Okay. See, again, I said these errors can be returned. Okay, oh wait, I did not return. So what do we want to return? We want to return count. We want to return count. Okay, right. So yeah, that's done. Expected answers too. But would it take our solution? See, in this case, it's basically returning us the wrong output. Why does that happen? Now, should we go and do digits equals to 0? And now let's check for the solution. See, accepted. That is what I'm talking about. If you are encountering a problem in your question, you have to figure out by doing mistakes and by whatever is it that you will be changing in your problem that will allow you to understand your solution better. So what I did initially was I just implemented this part, and I had not included digits equals to 0, and that had led to, my problem was not submitted, right? Why that happened was because of the fact that it was not, the digits variable was not getting set back to 0 when it should have. So that is why the problem was persisting. So when we are able to figure that kind of problem, the problem that is arising after our submission, we can understand what mistakes we are committing, and then we can, come back and just resolve our mistakes. So this was a problem for you guys. I'm just going to show you the details, and then we can go about. So okay, so test case is passed, runtime was 1 millisecond, and it's accepted. It's higher than 95.99% of Java submissions, and it's even better in the memory distribution. Okay, so that was my problem for you guys. I'll come up with another one for the next time onwards. So keep coding and keep learning. Goodbye.